start to rise. The energy fill the sky.
Good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. Guys, welcome back. We're having so much conversations this morning, and this morning we are jumping straight ahead in our conversation with the boss lady herself. We're talking about Miss Zorisha Hackett, who is also Assemblyman Zorisha Hackett, and she is currently the Secretary for the Division of Education, Research and Technology. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Miss Felix. Good morning, Tobago.
Right. I mean, it's always a privilege to have you in studio with us to discuss a number of things. But we know right now we are in the height of the back to school.
Yes.
So now we have persons running around doing those last minute preparations to get their kids ready back out. And, some students we see are already going out to the orientation days.
So all orientation processes were completed yesterday. Last two schools, Bishop's High School and Signal Hill. So all
excellent. And we have those students that also have that bit of anxiety about going out to a new school, going out to a new class. So talk to us a bit about this reintroduction to the school too.
All right. So good morning again, Tobago. Academic year 2025-2026 is just a couple days away. We initially thought we were going to have a 7-week break, which would have been really different from the norm. And then Minister and I agreed that we really needed the 8 weeks break. And so, yes, school is reopening next Monday. Very excited to get staff and students back out and for us to push for this 14-week term. It's the longest term of the academic year, and so we expect that a lot will be done as it relates to academics, extracurricular activities, and just getting our feet wet again in what it means to transform education here on the island of Tobago.
And we see that the central government has now reintroduced one of its key policies, being the laptops for first formers.
Yes.
And there's a conversation surrounding, not just having the physical laptops, but having the infrastructure in place and the curriculum that is adjusted to the technology because of where the society is going in.
Yes.
Tell us about where Tobago stands in terms of that technological thrust towards, a new era in education.
All right, well, you would know that the division was renamed with this administration, Education, Research and Technology. And so we have a Department of Technology, and for now, the focus is on a special purpose company, the Tobago Information Technology Limited, TITL, recently rebranded TITL. And so what we've done as a division is introduce a policy where all our technological procurement processes are handled by that special purpose company. And so we've also spent some time investing in upgrading in the infrastructure, connectivity issues we've had in particular schools. We've spent some time working on dealing with upgrades and even dealing with enhancing those rooms. The challenge we continue to have is putting the actual infrastructure into the classrooms. And of course, with the reintroduction of these laptops, devices for our first formers, we hope that in a 5-year period, we can move through the system. But I want to speak to the fact that we must remember our actual educators in the process. So yes, the devices are going to come for the first formers. We expect them at the end of September, Ms. Felix. But we want to invest right now in our teachers and ensuring that they're equipped in the classroom just as our students are. Currently, we have IT labs in all our schools, and they're not where they should be. And so that's also an investment the division continues to make. Also, we have subjects like EDPM, and that is one of the subjects also utilizing devices. And so we have to ensure the labs are also equipped and not only focus on the fact that first formers are coming in and going to be gifted by this new government, the laptop. So it's an all of education sector approach to the upgrades and the digitalization and the thrust towards technology, and we're utilizing what we have, or TITL, to help us, and for the ICT unit vested in the Division of Education to work along even ministries ICT unit, and the Ministry of Public Administration and AI is also going to jump in to provide that type of support that we need here in Tobago.
Excellent. How does this feed into the hybrid learning policy policy that the
Right,
division
so
came up with.
you know that that policy has been completed about a year or so ago, and funding has been our challenge. It's always a challenge. So since we've been here as an administration, about 12, 13 policies have been developed by technical advisor and the technical team of the division under my leadership. But a challenge has always been funding. And Minister of Education was here yesterday. Good morning, Dr. Dowlat. He was here yesterday and spent some time really delving into what we have in terms of the work we've done and being able to discuss collaborative efforts moving forward to assist us with funding. Upon assuming office, I sent all our policies to the minister, and he spent some time really looking into the fact that Tobago is even light years ahead from Trinidad as it relates to these policies, and that hybrid, for instance, was one. And I spoke to the fact that collaboration is what is needed because we're coming up with the policies. We have the technical expertise to develop the policies, but what we don't have is the funding. And it really hurts me when we're working so hard, and because we have to spread the resources thinly across such a large division. You know, you don't want your hard work to be in vain. You just don't want it to be a campaign promise, or that you're speaking it in the public space and a year, 2, 3 later, you still have not been able to execute. And so I spoke to him in us being collaborative. Let's put our brains together. But when it comes to funding, understand that our budget does not fulfill what is required to really move education in the direction we need it to be moved in Tobago. And so that's what we're going to need, some greater advocacy from him as Minister to Minister of Finance. So when Tobago asks for a larger budgetary allocation, you must understand that sectors such as health and education, where there are no tangible results, where the results would not happen overnight, it wouldn't happen in one term, you need a longer term attention being placed on these particular sectors for us to really get the results we want. So we need that voice down there. So yesterday I kind of sent him off to be my advocate in central government, and of course coupled with MP for Tobago West and MP for Tobago East, we want to ensure that the funding comes to Tobago. The ideas are here, but the money, the resources is what's lacking.
No, you had conversations with previous ministers for education. Why are you so confident this time around about the actual investment in Tobago? So,
to be honest with you, you're always cautious. You're always wary. But I saw something in this particular Minister of Education that I didn't see in previous, even those before I became Secretary. This Minister of Education, first of all, let me speak to the action. This Leadership in Motion forum that occurred yesterday, and that's one of the reasons he came to Tobago, happened in Trinidad about a week and a half ago in Naparima College. And he was former principal there. And so he pulled principals from the 7 education districts in Trinidad into this space. And of course, an invitation was meted out to us there in Tobago. We couldn't get flights. And when we saw how important this would have been, because of course, we're responsible for education here in Tobago, but we always buy into the national strategy. And so when we saw we were having such a challenging time, one of the options was, let's just do an online link and have our teachers join virtually. And I told him, listen, no, Tobago always feels left out. Tobago always feels like that bastard child. We always feel as if we're not included. And I needed us to really demonstrate the spirit of collaboration. And so Minister pulled a team of 15 technocrats and came to Tobago yesterday. We planned it all. And he actually sat on stage as a part of a panel with me and received questions from principals, teacher administrators at the ECC level, and our school supervisors and other technocrats of the division, and was there supporting me in us speaking to the collaboration that we should expect. And I saw him utilizing best practices of him being a principal, speaking to the fact that he actually understands the concerns. And I've been seeing it over the last 4 or so months, him really being on the ground and being able to have direct interaction with the stakeholders of education because he's walked the path before. And so, Shenell, simple things like that. I'm seeing that, you know, there is some good news and some good efforts to look forward to and to respect that commitment. I've have also seen a long-standing issue where, for instance, extended leave and other types of leave to be classified doesn't happen here in Tobago and has never happened here in Tobago. And they have to go to Trinidad and they're on the minister's desk, and you know how that happens, how the bureaucracy happens. When you have to have all Tobago teachers be subjected to sending their information to Trinidad to be classified. And it was one of the early areas I asked him to look into for me. And through that advocacy with MPs of Tobago East and West again, and the Chief Secretary got involved here as well, we were able to have that issue resolved. So now those powers are devolved to the Tobago House of Assembly, effective the 28th of August. So that's last week. And so now teachers, your leave, extended or otherwise, wouldn't have to go all the way down to Trinidad and get lost in or on someone's desk. They now will happen right here in the Tobago House of Assembly. And I'm proud because we experience challenges when teachers are about to retire in organizing, those payments that they're going to leave with. And it has been a long-standing issue. And in 4 or so months, we've been able to resolve that. And that shows the commitment to collaboration. It shows that there's political will and that this government understands the needs of this island and that we're going to really work together to resolve those needs.
Excellent. This administration at the THA level would have gotten a couple commitments from the central government during the previous administration, under the PNM administration, specifically as it pertains to the Scarborough Secondary School. Where are we with that? And has the central government continued with the previous commitments that were given, or are they looking at a new structure, a new arrangement, a new allocation for that particular project?
So Shenell, just off the bat, costing for this new Scarborough Secondary School, once it goes according to the user brief, would be in or around $400 million. And it's because of the type of school we want. If we're going in that direction, where we want to really see technological advancements and we're pushing in the direction of digital trust and digital transformation, then it must go in that direction. Previous government and the Tobago House of Assembly admitted that in any one financial year, a school of that magnitude and that cost would not be possible. But we spoke to phasing the project out. And one of the initial investments we wanted to make was to go to the Caribbean Development Bank, and we tried that on the THA side. And because it's a loan, and taking a loan of that magnitude had to be guided by central government. Former Minister of Finance didn't agree to that methodology and wanted the central government to fund the school. The thing about that, Ms. Felix, is that you have to literally wait on the central government to decide when they're going to fund. And we think that our advocacy as a Tobago House of Assembly has been so great that by now we were fed up of the lip service and we were fed up of the promises that were not materializing. And so one of the things we did, I don't know if you remember, that Chief Secretary and myself as leader of Assembly Business went to Prime Minister and leader of government business very early on in their term, and Scarborough Secondary School was one of the areas we brought to the table very early. Subsequent to that, Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Finance had conversations with Minister of Finance for the central government to honor that request, or at least the commitment to have Scarborough Secondary School funded by central government. We understand what's happening with the economy of the country, and so Minister of Finance has committed to go out and to secure that loan on the Tobago House of Assembly's behalf. And we also agreed to attempt the school on a phased basis. We want to ensure that we have the spaces that would be classroom and specialist areas first, and then move into those other areas that we think would enhance a school like Scarborough Secondary, where of course sports is one of the strong points of that school. Because if you look at the user brief, you're going to see things like a swimming pool and, regulation size football field and all the other sporting facilities that would be augmenting a school that wants to go into that holistic development program. And so we are really, really assured by the central government that they're going to take these requests seriously. Minister visited current Scarborough Secondary there at Shaw Park and the proposed site for new Scarborough Secondary at Bacalet Park. And so what we have is them actually being on the ground and not just hearing about these things, in a vacuum and not actually coming to see what the challenges are. And when ministers saw, the type of infrastructural issues we have there, walls separating, how many times we had to bring that fence line in, movement, because there's some underground water there as well outside of the coastal erosion, actually understanding the need. And it's not just us feeling for a luxury item or just us as an administration just wanting to do another developmental project. There's a real need. But we also spoke about not abandoning that facility even when we move, and what we can do there, and the fact that technical, vocational and skills training is one of the strong points of both governments, and areas we want to push and ensure that our young persons have opportunities. And it's not only about academia and understanding that balanced approach to education and understanding life skills and everything else that makes you a well-balanced citizen. So we spoke to the plans of future plans for that facility, even while pushing towards the development there in Bacalet Park.
Right. Secretary Hackett, let's chat a bit about, the business of education. Because when you have a school that you're taking a loan to build, how are we going to find a way to, generate revenue surrounding that school? Because when you talk about a school that has a swimming pool, basketball courts, football fields, I am thinking about everyone wanting to send their children there.
That is
that
is one of the things we're worried about. And so even in the conversation of us building out that smart school, we have to ensure that all the other 8 secondary schools has a particular magnet, a particular pull. So we don't have everybody wanting to go to the newest physical infrastructure.
Right.
But when you spoke to the business, I automatically, my mind just ran on the Alumni Association. And big up Mr. Kevin McKenna and team one time. I know he's going to tease me for this, but they have a very strong Alumni Association, and they have a very robust and active PTA. I must commend that element of support, and it's not just the school and the division managing what happens there. And so I'm not worried at all. I already know the Alumni Association has been thinking about areas they can monetize their plant, and so we won't have challenges. And of course, the division is always open and welcome to ideas. And because it's a government school, the Division of Education will also have some responsibility on how we find ways to ensure that there's some return on the investment that we're going to make there. And you're right, because you don't want a school that once it's not active school, the active school day, it's shut up, and that investment is not materializing on what we can get back from it. And so one of the areas we want to be able to project, and not only with Scarborough Sec, but the other schools, even primary schools, is find ways to open up your doors to the public so you can make some income, and you can help the division to be able to, assist you with the resources you so require. And so we're not worried about that at all. The support is already there because they have some stakeholders, internal stakeholders that are very serious about ensuring that they raise funds and they have autonomy in assisting the division to manage that school.
So are we looking at moving from a Scarborough Secondary School to a Scarborough Secondary College?
Oh, wow. So that concept is one we can think about, but we don't want the school to be what a typical secondary school looks like. And so however we rename the school, and I'm not speaking about location, because one of the reasons we try to remain in this space is because the school, 1961 was the opening day of that school. And so the school is a year older than this country is. And so we want to maintain the name. When my father went to the school, it was called Scarborough Secondary School. It was 5 years. Then it transitioned to Scarborough Junior Secondary School, and now it has retained the Scarborough Secondary School name. And so branding is important. So changing the name would have to also be a conversation. But I think more than a name is what you do on the plant. And so we can build out a specific curriculum, as we're trying to do, as I am on the topic one time, as we're trying to do at the Mason Hall Secondary School, and we can speak to that a bit later on. But we want to ensure that every Tobagonian child that transitions from primary to secondary feels confident enough entering any of our 9 secondary schools. And although you have that choice, first, second, third, fourth, when you're approaching the SEA exam, we don't want a scenario where parents are up to the very last minute trying to get a transfer out because they believe a particular school is lesser than another. We have 9 schools. The division places the same emphasis on all 9. There's stigmas attached to particular schools. But I've seen over the years where the school that was least wanted, the school that parents opted for at the bottom of what we would call that list, have now moved up. And and it's because mindsets have shifted. Students remained in the school and they were able to excel there. And so now, every now and again, you have another school pulling up the rear. And we don't want to continue having to face off with parents in terms of them advocating strongly for their child to be moved from one school to another because they believe they're not getting the same level of education at that particular school. So while we're moving forward with this new pilot of a smart school for Scarborough Sec, we're also reimagining what we do at the other 8. We have one that is going to be 100 years old in a couple of days, right? And then we have a few that in 21 years, they just came on the scene. The Goodwood, the Speyside, the Mason Hall, and the Pentecostal Light and Life. But all 9 schools are the responsibility of the Division of Education, and we're going to continue placing the resources as equitably as we can to ensure that any Tobago child feels comfortable in the school he or she is assigned to.
Excellent.
Yes.
Guys, we're going to take a quick break right here, and we'll be back with much more conversation right after this. See you soon.
This is never wrong.
Good morning and welcome back. Welcome back to Tobago Updates. Guys, we have been having a really interesting conversation with the Secretary for Education, Research and Technology, Assemblyman Zorisha Hackett. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Now, we've seen an issue that took place, I believe it's over the last couple of weeks where there was some late payments for that August salary for teachers. Tell us a bit about that. This has been causing a bit of a
not only
stir.
teachers, even Secretary of Education receives salary late. And so that's another one of the areas that I want to let Tobagonians know. My teachers would not be paid and I'm paid. It's one of the areas I made clear with my accounts. Secretary can't be receiving a salary and the teachers or any other members of our staff, whether it's library, whether it's our special purpose companies, receiving salaries late. So Shenell, this is where management comes in. We are in a building that is, for want of a better term, not the best as it relates to the infrastructure. And we have been coping. And it's because you always have to select what you prioritize in a division as large as mine. And so we've been expecting to do some really serious works related to AC and ventilation in the building. And it kind of breaks my heart that the staff of the Division of Education that I expect to push the work out to ensure that our external staff are well treated with, have to endure some of these conditions. But when we juxtapose what it would cost for us to upgrade what's happening or even look for another building if that's the issue or that's the resolution, then sometimes you have to make the decision that you think is more urgent. And so, for instance, school repair has been, the focus of the division for the last 2 or so months. And the monies we have to expend on the school repair, part of that could have gone to us upgrading our spaces, workspaces. And so although we can pull from it in a minute way to ensure staff is comfortable, right now the focus is on having our staff and students return to safe spaces. And those are the decisions we make. So right now, again, we have some server issues because of where the server is housed. And because our ventilation and air conditioning systems are not working well. And because of that, in order to not lose all our data, our ICT unit and some other technical staff have advised us that at particular times of the day, we'll have to shut down. And so what has happened is coming down to the end of the payment and very late at that, at a stage when we really could not put the communication out there. It was over the long weekend. We realized that some of what we were supposed to do didn't get out in time. But what the division did is those teachers, and it's not a lot of teachers, Shenell. We have 900 and something teachers, less than 50 teachers who are affected. Those teachers were given checks so they can cash on their own. And so again, we have some issues that pop up out of nowhere. We try our best to communicate with our stakeholders, internal stakeholders, as far as we can, but sometimes there's some issues that we just can't resolve in time. Our division tries its best to be very proactive with mitigating against these issues. And so every now and again, we drop the ball and we're not perfect there. And even as a leader, I would be the first to admit that we can do better with communication, but it's not a challenge of no allocation or there is no money in the division to pay. We had some technical issues because we do everything digitally in the division and those technical issues caused a delay. And I want our teachers to know that the division continues to work hard to ensure that they're rewarded, they're given their just dues, and that these issues don't become frequent ones. And so I'm apologizing on the division's behalf. But again, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't an issue of no funds to pay, but we had some technical issues that caused a 2-day or so delay in their payment. And again, as I said, secretary also was not paid. So, yes.
Understood. You know, it seems that every year we hear about issues related to delays in school repairs or just some schools not being repaired at all. I had a conversation yesterday with tutor representative for Tobago, Braden Roberts, and he was just, you know, identifying specific
Doing
schools.
his work.
Identifying specific schools that have no repairs carded for this time around, like the Lambo AC, and he would have highlighted that that particular school has some ventilation issues and it's really hot after break time in the morning. Tell us a bit about what's happening with the school repair project.
So there is a misconception in this space, and I think Tutor Tobago officers should know better. And not peddle misinformation or not mislead the public in a way he always does in or around this period. There are 57 schools, and if I include the Roxborough Trade Center, we are responsible for 58 plants on the island of Tobago. There is no way, even with all the money in the world, the division can afford to repair every plant it's responsible for in any particular period. And that is because the same resources we utilize to repair our schools, the same resources we're going to send students out to university last week, this week, and in the coming weeks is the same development program funding, same. And so we always have to prioritize, and we always have to, if I have to call it juggle, we always have to ensure we distribute the funds so every sector gets a bit of it. And therefore, I heard a soundbite where Mr. Roberts was claiming about 13 or so schools weren't touched at all. And I want to put on record that Mr. Roberts' figures are inaccurate. There were 31 schools not touched, and it's not touched because we intended to touch them. We, as a division, sat at the beginning of the period, and I'm saying the period, we usually sit in around March, April. That's when we start organizing our school repair program. Mr. Roberts has a duty, which is to go to the teachers in schools and almost create a wish list. And the division is always aware of the wish list. We have a project implementation unit with assigned officers that are in and around the schools, along with a school supervision and management unit, which have a close monitoring and evaluation role so they understand the needs of the schools. You also have a secretary who's directly informed and is in and around our schools as well, so we know what the needs are. Mr. Roberts goes to the schools and he gets the wish list. You can be an advocate for your schools, but the direct link is between the school supervisors or PIU and the schools. So I can say I want 10 things, and I'm speaking about what I want as a particular school, not really taking into account what other schools need and if their needs are more critical than mine. And so having that list is okay. But the division sits with our project manager in this regard. For the school repair program, it's EID cut. And our PIU with the school supervisors, and we prioritize. So you may want to change the color of your wall, but another school needs a roof repaired, or the sewer needs to be upgraded. The division has to make that decision, and that's where leadership comes in. You have to make a decision based on the funding you have available. Ms. Felix, by the time we were finished with that process, really and truly, the budget of the school repair program should have been $45 million. If we have to spend $45 million on school repair, it means no other teacher can receive a gratuity or increment for the year. It means no university students can go off to university. It means we have no netball program, no football program, nothing else but school repair. And so as secretary, I have to lead my division, and I have to ensure that we touch every area to ensure that we remain up and open for business. And so I believe that Mr. Roberts, in an effort to, I guess, be that strong union leader, does what he has to do. But I have to do what I have to do, Ms. Felix. And so at the onset, we expressed that we were only touching 26 schools. 26 schools, 45 packages. We also decided, upon the advice of the Secretary of Finance, that we can do a phase 2. And what phase 2 means is, you do or treat with the schools that must absolutely have some interventions before the 8th of September. they can't open if you don't have these interventions. But you ensure that you continue repairing the schools as we always do throughout the academic year. And another thing I want to put on record is the fact that the division doesn't only repair schools July, August. As a matter of fact, if that was the case, we'd have some schools in rubbles right now. The division, as a matter of fact, spends more money in the academic year treating with refurbishments and upgrades and maintenance than it actually does in the school repair. And so let me give you some figures. In any particular school repair program, we have an estimated budget of around 20 million. There was one year where we went to about 42 million, and that was that year coming out of the two-year closure for COVID. And we are still paying for some of the repairs we did in that period. But it was extremely important because a lot of our schools were not touched in that 2 years and was in such a state of disrepair. To have them reopened for April 2022, we had to make that investment. But I feel a sense of fear-mongering and more or less creating or sowing seeds of doubt coming out of tutor who should know better because they sit with us at the Division of Education. They're a part of the decision-making processes. Mr. Roberts is so much in the division. Sometimes I wonder if, he's actually one of our members of staff, and he sits and have these really constructive conversations with us, sits at the table, has statutory meetings with the administrator, and I have an open door policy with Mr. Roberts as well. So when I see a week or two before schools open, he does his usual, activity of fear-mongering and going into the space, 13 schools weren't touched. More than 13 schools weren't touched because we intentionally choose the schools that we deem to be very important or high priority areas that must be treated with before schools return. With almost 800 schools in Trinidad, they only touched about two high up, right? And they would never have the resources, Ministry of Education that is, to treat with all 800 schools. And in the same regard, with 58 plants under purview, we'll never have, and through selective priority and strategizing on those that need to be dealt with urgently, we'll always have a case of some not being touched. They'll be deep cleaned. We'll ensure that the furniture is out, the cleaners on the plant, ensure that they have the resources required, but we may not be able to give you all that's required. And let's speak to Lambo Anglican. We need to have a conversation about what it means to be government assisted and government schools. We have 34 primary schools in Tobago and 13 are government primary schools, and they actually say government on them. And all the others are denominational. So the Anglican board has 12, the Methodist board has 6, Pentecostal board has 1 primary, and the Roman Catholic board has 2. There are 4 Seventh-day Adventist schools, but they are private, so they're not assisted by us. The secondary school, Harmon School of SDA is, but not the primary. And so we have a concordat, and we'll have to have a conversation one day about what the concordat really means and what it means to be government assisted. Notwithstanding, this Tobago House of Assembly has taken 100% responsibility, which it's not legally responsible for. 100% responsibility of all 34 primary schools on the island. And what we have been doing is trying to upgrade, because one of the major issues with our schools is the electricity, the load is not where it needs to be. And so Lambo Anglican, I saw that as a school being featured. If you have to ask me which school I get the most complaints about heat and ventilation, it would be Lambo Anglican. And if you're not familiar with Lambo Anglican, you may be surprised because that's a school very close to the sea. And you actually expect that school to be properly ventilated. All right. But what's happening with Lambo Anglican is the location. So it's a school on the coast, but how it's built, the layout and the logistics doesn't augur well in terms of ventilation. But guess what's happening at Lambo Anglican before we can even discuss AC? Lambo Anglican does not have the correct load to facilitate air conditioning. And so what we did as a division is decided this is the year we're going to invest heavily in upgrading Lambo Anglican so we can have a school where now we can have the air conditioning in. Mr. Roberts must be aware of that. And so it's not just about AC. How do we get the ACs installed without the right load? And that is the investment we made this year and will continue to make until the end of September, upgrading Lambo Anglican's load. After that, the Division of Education will sit with the Anglican board and we can meet each other halfway. If the school requires 6 air conditioning units, the division, and I've already committed to it with my PIU, that was one of the conversations we had, we're going to ask the board to meet us halfway. Ask the Anglican board to meet us halfway, and if they can't, we incrementally give the school all it requires. But I use that school as an example to speak to the fact that you're in the public space, speaking about air conditioning and the school requesting it, which I absolutely agree with. But a school can't get to a state where it's fully air conditioned and it does not have the correct load, and we have challenges. We don't want a fire in that school, right? And so with the aging infrastructure, there's several steps that we need to achieve before getting to a point where the school gets all that it requires. And so I will continue, as the leader I am, to advocate strongly for more resources here in Tobago to ensure that we can give the schools what they absolutely need. And it's not a want, it's not luxury. It's absolutely important that our teachers and our students are in comfortable learning environments. But Mr. Roberts, being at the table, must be able to go out into the public space and really speak to the facts and speak to what he knows is actually the intention of the division, and not have people feeling very unsure about what's going to happen next Monday. And I want to, at this juncture, assure Tobago that all 58 of our plants will reopen on the 8th of September. We have agreed, as I said before, to only treat with 26 schools. All 26 schools have been given the attention they require. A few final touches are happening right now as we speak, but they'll be up and ready for Monday. Further to that, we will embark on phase 2 of the school repair program as early as mid-September, and those works will occur on afternoons and on weekends. And I'm seeing Trinidad also doing the same external works that don't affect contact hours, and then we'll roll out anything else that would in December. And just as we've always done under my leadership, we continue routine maintenance, we continue addressing the issues throughout the academic year, and this July-August period should only be for areas we really could not touch because it would have affected contact hours. So the work continues at the Division of Education, Research and Technology. I want persons to be rest assured that we try our utmost best to utilize the limited funds afforded to us to really spread it across the board. Because again, Mr. Roberts should be one to come on this station, and he probably alluded to it a bit yesterday, but he didn't go all the way in, to speak to the fact that we have expended almost $170 million on gratuity payments and almost $90 million on increments since I became Secretary of Education. It's the largest payout of gratuity and increments in the history of the Tobago House of Assembly. And so while advocating for school repairs, you can't on the next end speak to the fact that we should have spent $40 million on the repairs, and then you're coming September morning to probably protest with your teachers, right? My teachers. To protest with my teachers, our teachers, that gratuity payments and increments are still there piling up. We have to be able to balance the scale. We have to be able to spread it equitably across such a large division and ensure all stakeholders, internal and external, are dealt with in the best way, in the fairest way. And as we hear, Shenell, there's also another story in the space. I saw it this morning about our community impact auxiliary workers advocating for some payments that are owed to them as a part of this program. Again, I want to just tell Tobago, we have been trying our utmost best to ensure that we balance education on the island, and not only in our academic institutions, but also in these after-school programs, and ensuring that adult literacy and numeracy is restored, and ensuring that persons value the importance of that, because not everyone had the opportunities we had, Shenell, and not everyone had the capacity to take part in the formal education system as we know it and to really benefit from it. And so as a responsible division under the leadership of our Chief Secretary, that was one of the mandates, and it actually became one of the 44 projects, that community impact program. And the program rolled out in or around the end of June, and we had 10 weeks of that program. And how that program is organized is the tutors, the cleaners, those who are part of the maintenance regime of that program, they are remunerated based on timesheets. It's not full-time employment. And so what happens is you go into a center at the end of the session and you clean up, and a timesheet is submitted to the division. Since that program has embarked, salaries have already been paid for the timesheets that came into the division. Whatever is outstanding is because we're tying up the timesheets. And the program ended mid-August. We're here, today is what? The 3rd, 4th of September. I'm trying to pull it together. The 4th of September. And if mid-August the program ended, the timesheets, which take a week or so to be pulled in, that's what the division is doing. The bureaucracy is happening right now. But to put it in the space as if since the program, because I'm saying months, the program was only 10 weeks long. And as I said before, what is now outstanding is that period that took us to mid-August. And I totally understand the fact that school is reopening. We have those with needs who would have depended on a particular level of support through a program such as this. But the division has also, on the other end, expended almost $800,000 in providing support to the most needy amongst us. And even in such a program, those persons on the lower end of the economic scale, if I have to call it that, were also targeted. And so if you provide work to any Tobago House of Assembly entity or agency, you deserve pay. And you deserve timely pay at that. But in this particular case, the program just ended. We're doing the paperwork, and so there must be some level of patience with the bureaucracy, as we know. There must be. And if additional support is required, the division is there with open arms, as well as, and I'm putting a plug in here for my colleagues, all 15 area representatives were afforded the opportunity with the good leadership of our Chief Secretary to safeguard all year for us to be able to have some $500 vouchers of persons of the public have been seeing us actually being able to distribute across the length and breadth of this island. It's out of sacrifice and out of our care for the people of Tobago, we were able to assist a lot of parents to get their children back out to school. So the opportunities for support are there. The division continues to understand the fact that in this island and with the economic realities, we must be more robust and diligent in how we push our payments to service providers out there, but we also must be fair and not put wrong information out in the space and give, those headlines like months.
Understood.
I have a challenge with that. Yeah.
But unfortunately, we have to wrap up this morning.
Wow, what's the time?
Thank you so much for giving us your time this morning and coming and giving us the level of clarity that is needed.
Yes.
Encouraging students and teachers and even the staff at the Division of Education to prepare, adequately for the new school term ahead. Also giving us those updates on the relationship between the central government and the THA commitments that have been given by the minister to help you with those projects and those policies that have been done by the division, and have been sitting there waiting for adequate funding. But guys, we want to thank you so much for being a part of this morning's discussions. Thank you for your likes, your shares, and your comments, and all that you have been doing and continue to do to make Tobago Updates the #1 broadcaster here on the island of Tobago. Again, I am your host, Shenell Felix, and have a great day.